Hey, welcome into another episode of my Curious Mind podcast, where I highly encourage curiosity and I equally suggest it. Remember, if you're exploring your mind, you're also gaining knowledge. And without further ado, I want to introduce my first guest of this podcast ever. We're 6 episodes in, and I got a great brother coming on. He's one of the smartest brothers that I know. uh, I honestly think just knowing him has increased my intelligence by 10%. My wife is also a big fan of his. He's a well studied, well traveled brother, very insightful. His grasp of knowledge is amazing. Looking at him in the background right now, I can see about 1,000 books, and I'm pretty sure he's read every book, and he has notes on most pages in the books that he can guide you to. He's also an author of two amazing books, and I'll let him talk more about those two amazing books. He probably can do a much better job than I can. He's a proud member of the amazing HBCU Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. I actually believe we graduated together. I think he can confirm. I see him shaking his head backstage. So we also are both proud members of the greatest fraternity in the world, A Phi A, 1906. And without further ado, I'd like to bring this brother to the podcast.
Uhuru, my brother.
Good morning.
So good to be here with you, man. I appreciate the words. I hope I can live up to them. I hope I don't disappoint you, but I'm glad to be here with your podcast family, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Okay. Hey, you always live up to the discussion, good brother. Always. So what's going on in your life?
Same old, same old. Getting older, trying to get wiser, trying to keep up with these kids and keep the family and the wife happy, grown man stuff, You know how it is. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah, I definitely understand that. To be honest, one day we need to do a podcast titled an episode titled Mr. Mom.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever watched that 80s movie?
Is that with Robin Harris?
No, this is an 80s movie starring what's the guy that played Batman in the when they started the Batman series back up in 89 and 1990. Is it Michael Keaton? I think it's Michael Keaton.
It sounds right, yeah.
And it's a movie, it's called Mr. Mom. But basically the premise of the movie is he starts out he's an engineer at a Ford or GM somewhere in Detroit. And basically they're downsizing, they're laying off the engineers, they're putting them on furlough, giving them a little severance package. And his wife is typical of, the 80s woman, probably educated, but stays at home and is basically domestic. So he has to come home and she's like, hey, I got a degree. Let me finally use it. She ends up finding a really good job. He stays at home and he takes on the role of the woman. He starts he gains weight. He grows his beard out. He starts eating chocolate and he's into clipping coupons and shopping and all that stuff. But it's a real good movie. And basically you and I and a lot of other brothers I know are performing that role of Mr. Mom.
Oh yeah, that is true. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And if you had told me back when we was walking across that stage that we would both be in this position like we are, I couldn't have imagined it, But family life and kids and marriage, all of that is good, man. And I'm blessed and I'm thankful for that every day.
All right, so let's get to it, good brother. Definitely when I was thinking about this particular podcast and want to really focus on our two-party political system here in America and the problems with it, and how can we ultimately fix it. I definitely thought about you because you're such a very insightful, knowledgeable person and well studied. But let's get straight to it. So, how has our political system to you changed? You and we're about in the same age range in our mid 40s. So just within our lifetime, since we've been old enough to follow politics, how do you feel that the politics has changed here in America?
Well, if you'll forgive me, I'm a historian at heart, sociologist by trade, so I got to go back a little bit if you don't mind.
Not
Uh,
at all.
okay, it has changed many ways, and this is going far back before either you or I was thought of. But a lot of people look at it from such a narrow vantage point. History is so vast that something that happened 200 years ago is really like last week. So if we can look at the two political parties from their inception, the Republican Party is not what a lot of people, it didn't originate like a lot of people may have thought it did. Back in 1854, March 20th, the Republican Party was actually started in Wisconsin to combat the spread of slavery by the Democratic Party. And that would shock most people.
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. It was known as the Party of Abolitionists, which is a total shocker to, I imagine, a lot of people listening to us right now. The Democratic Party was known as the Party of Slavery, to believe it or not. And so if we fast forward to the mid 60s, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed what was called the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which granted voting rights and a lot of the accommodations that we now enjoy as African Americans. He put that into act. This enraged a lot of the stereotypical white Democratic citizen. So they jumped ship to the Republican Party. And what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of African Americans, especially the majority of voting African Americans at this time, a lot of them were Republican because Abraham Lincoln was the party of free, abolition, freeing the slaves. So they jumped ship and joined the Republican Party in support of Lyndon Baines Johnson and the progressive things that he was doing. So just in that amount of time, the two parties flip-flopped like 180 degrees. Now, in our current situation, during our lifetimes, Brother Johnson, it has changed from the standpoint of Republicans and Democrats, especially on the congressional level, used to cooperate. They had different views, but they realistically had the same goals in mind: to keep the country safe, to keep the economy healthy, and that sort of thing. And they would work together. They would strike deals. Now, in our lifetime, it has become so polarized that it was not uncommon when we were children that you could sit at the dinner table at like Thanksgiving and people would have arguments about politics. One was conservative or liberal, but it was all in fun. It was like our sporting teams,
Mm-hmm.
Now it's so visceral that it elicits violence. So it's either my way or no way. People even vote against their own self-interest just in support of a political party. And the main way you look at this, if you know how to approach it. Politics is a science, and you and I, being members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, we were, taught, indoctrinated with a voteless people as a hopeless people.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't vote for a party, you vote for who has your own self-interest. You look at it from a scientific standpoint. You demand things, and if a politician promises that he can deliver and you halfway believe him, that's who you vote for, no matter what he looks like or what political party he's had. So that would be the main difference that I would think of the two-party system that we have. Just the vitriol, the violence, and almost this gangster mentality that I have to get you. I have to one up you. I have to destroy you. And I think that is very unhealthy for the country in general. And I would name that as the main difference. If you agree with me on that or not.
I definitely agree with a lot of the points that you were making. Like I said, we're in our mid 40s, but I can remember the first election that I voted in was, I think, the Gore Bush.
Okay.
So you're a couple of years ahead of me. So maybe you voted.
Yeah,
what do you like?
Clinton Dole was the first one. I was
Okay,
actually
so
I was 18.
I couldn't do it until the Gore Bush was the first one.
Okay.
I was able to vote in, but I can remember there wasn't this big divide, and after the election, because if you remember, that was actually the first election that I remember that was contested.
Oh yeah.
I think Gore held out before he acknowledged that Bush won, and they had some legal maneuvers that they did. And it was mainly due to the state of Florida, because if I'm not mistaken, it was within a close percentage point, like a number of votes. It could have been less than 1,000, less than 500. I don't remember the number, but it was
the
close.
hanging chads.
Yeah, so it made sense. I think both parties can say it made sense to challenge. Say, hey, let's do a recount. They did several recounts. After a week or two, I think Gore finally conceded the election. To me, that's practically normal, and I don't feel like there were any long-lasting evil view. The parties wasn't going at each other about that. They pretty much, once he conceded, they went past that, and Bush Jr. or Bush 2, as we call him, he went on about his way with his presidents, and he actually served two terms. And Gore went about his life, doing his things on the side with climate change and stuff like that. So definitely, I can remember that, and I don't remember it being no bad blood. I also can remember when Clinton was in office. Now, I wasn't voting, but I can remember Newt Gingrich. I'm saying his name right? Newt Gingrich. He was the Speaker of the House, and he was a very physical conservative Republican. But him and Clinton got along, even though they tried to impeach him. I think on 2 occasions, some impeachment hearings, but they got along and moved policy and made compromise. And it kind of gets us to now. There's no major compromise. I believe both political parties are controlled by the fringes of both groups. You look at the left, and we'll kind of talk about this in some questions coming up. To me, the left is controlled by the progressives, the super progressives, with the big issue with the men participating in women's sports. I don't know why liberals tend to stick on that point. I don't understand why. I think the Republicans probably won this. That's one of the reasons why Trump probably won this.
About
it. Won this most recent election is because of, for whatever reason, liberals get stuck on points that you can't win, policies that there's no win really in that. I'm all for protecting and supporting individuals who fall in that transgender category. I believe they're due equal rights under the Constitution, just like any other citizen. But realistically, it's saying, okay, we can now, this person that was born as a male who is transitioned over to a woman, compete against a woman. That's like a common sense thing. Liberals are controlled by that small minority of their party, and they hold steadfast on that point. Just like, in my opinion, Republicans hold steadfast on a fringe minority group of their party. For example, thinking that people that's coming from South America or Mexico are coming over here are stealing their jobs, and that's the reason why they can't make their money. The data doesn't even really support that. Ultimately, the jobs that they're taking, picking the fruits and the crops in the fields and things like that, Americans aren't doing. I'm not
No.
doing the job. You're not out there doing the job. Personally, in my 45 years of living, I've never met one American that worked in the field that was chopping the head of lettuce.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never,
Yeah.
and that, I- I've never heard of that or come across that individual. So, if you look at, for example, some current polling and data suggests that about 62% of Republicans and 54% of Democrats have a unfavorable view of the other party.
Mm-hmm.
And there's polling that suggests if you go back to just 20 and 30 years ago, those numbers are quite lower.
Yeah.
At one point in time in our society, if you were, let's say, you were a liberal and you were a father and you had a daughter and she married a young man that was a Republican, it wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's now current polling and data that suggests if you are a Democrat or a Republican and your daughter marries outside of that base,
Yeah.
you're pissed.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
cut them off. And I actually know people that are in that predicament on both
Mm-hmm.
sides of the political aisle, where the
Absolutely.
family pretty much cuts them off. They won't help out with the kids. They don't extend the welcome to family functions. When the parents come in town, they stay at a hotel. They don't stay at the kid's house with their spouse. They don't have Thanksgiving dinner. They don't have they can't talk about politics. It's very nasty. It's
Absolutely.
definitely very a dirty
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Absolutely.
So
Bro,
let's move on to go ahead. You got something else to add to that, good brother?
yeah, I want to make 2 points. I remember that that Gore Bush election of 2000 when we were in college, and we thought the world had turned upside down. You remember the next day we were in chapel on Wednesday, and everything was doom and gloom. But one thing that sticks out to me from back in those days is watching the television coverage that night. Two things happened that most people either forget or they didn't miss because they were so young. But I distinctively remember the race being very close and George W. Bush coming on television and declaring that he won. And Al Gore came on immediately after and consented defeat. And then when they discovered the hanging chads in Florida, and that became a big deal. They went to court, but I think Bush primarily won because he actually tricked Gore into conceding too early. I think once you concede, you can't take it back. So I think that was a major part. And I think a lot of people missed that was a major part of that Supreme Court decision. Like, hey man, you gave up. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing. The second part I want to say is piggybacking on what you were saying about the Democratic strategy. I think it's all about strategy. And another thing that has changed mightily in our current time is the strategic planning of the Democratic Party. I think it is flip-flop where the Democrats used to have a one-up on the Republicans. They would tone deaf. They couldn't read the room. I think that has flipped. I totally
I agree.
agree.
I
I
agree.
agree with you about the subject matter that we choose to put on Front Street. I, like you, believe that every American, every human being, gay, straight, transgender, or what have you, has the right to be treated fairly, to be treated humanely, and equal. I will always support that right, no matter what your sexual persuasion is, gender, race, so on and so forth. But with that being said, you have to be able to read a room. And like you were saying about the farm workers, I know no African American, and I'm African American. I've been raised around African Americans my entire life. I don't know one that supports a male playing a female sport. I don't know one that supports a male being able to decide he ain't a male today and go into a female bathroom. So when you make those kind of issues, not something that a policy that you stand on like first and foremost, it's like, who's developing the strategy here? The second thing is, Republicans nowadays seem to be all on the same page. Whatever issue is, they pound it home on all the news channels. Democrats are so all over the place that you can't stick to one thing that you're concentrating on. And before I turn it back over to you, I will say I blame a lot of this on the former president, who said initially that he was only going to run once and he was just going to serve one term. When he decided to stay, he kind of messed up the natural order of things, and Harris was put in a almost impossible position. It's like getting ready for a title fight 2 weeks before the title fight. She did a phenomenal job, but the odds were too overwhelming. And I just believe that we missed the boat, and I say we in terms of voting for my own self-interest. Those other guys out strategized us. You know, we got out coach. You know, it be like that sometime. And hopefully we still around in 4 years and we can right the ship. But go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, good brother. I 100% agree.
Do you know the governor? Do you know the governor of Michigan, Gretchen
Wilson?
Whitmer, I think.
Whitmer. Okay.
She won in a state that Harris lost, and if you pay attention to her strategy, it was strictly economic. The price of eggs, grocery store prices, and we all know, if you are an intelligent person and you went to school, you know the president can't control the price of eggs. But They ran on that and people believed it. She ran on that. She saw what was working. She tailored her strategy to what concerned people. So, in other words, when something concerns somebody and they're crying out, hey, this is what we're worried about, you have to address that. You can't, I got all these people worried about the price of eggs. You can't talk about LGBT or border concerns. You have to focus on what they're telling you, what they need and what they want, and you have to reassure them that we're going to handle these things. And the other guy did that. So I think a lot of it falls on our strategy, and I miss those old guys from back in the day who were political scientists, and they weren't kind of amateurs. And I think we suffer because of it. But I'm sorry, I'm gonna get off my box.
No. It's all good information, good brother. So looking at what has changed, we kind of talked about that. Now let's talk about. I want to talk about what is causing the partisan divide, because we have a binary system, two parties, Republican and Democrats. What is causing that partisan divide? What divides? What causes it?
Okay. I'm going to bring up a couple subjects that I think is going to upset some people, because you know how people love their social media, right? Mm-hmm. One thing that is different in this current time than, let's say, that time, that era where you voted for the first time and Gore and Bush, is the internet, is TikTok, is Instagram, which is a beacon of misinformation. You can say anything that you want. And when you have low information people consuming that product, and when I say low information, that's not an insult. The average American is only concerned with their paycheck, going to work, taking care of their children. They're not paying attention to a lot of factual information. They want their news and they want it fast. And when you're listening to Elon Musk and MAGA America, the amount of lies that are told on a regular basis, repeatedly, so many times, You hear something enough times, you start to believe it. And I think that is one of the issues. You can say any damn thing you want to. It don't have to be true. It don't have to be factual. You don't have to be able to prove it. You just have to get people to believe it. And when you have a certain moral code that you believe, if I'm going to make a statement as a point of fact, I've got to have factual information to back it up. I've got to be able to prove it. I have to be right. You are at a handicap when you're going up against a person that can say any damn thing they want, no matter how fictitious it is. Their only object is to get the people to believe what they're saying. Once you can master that and do that, it's hard to combat that. If that makes sense. That's one of the major things. For instance, the other guys have convinced Zuckerberg to discontinue fact checking on Facebook. There was a point in time when you couldn't just say anything. If it wasn't true, you had to either label it as entertainment purpose, used for entertainment purposes, or they would strike it and take it down. That's gone. So now they really can say whatever they want to. And how do you combat that? That's one of the biggest issues. The second thing that I mentioned that has changed is we have become so cynical, and I think a lot of this is due to social media, that your vote doesn't count. That it's something that you shouldn't have to participate in. And I always remember an older gentleman told me when I was growing up that if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain about anything. You allowed it to happen. And I think three major numerical statistics that happened in the last election that's very important for people to realize is that President Trump accumulated 73 million votes. That's a lot of people. He didn't beat Harris as bad as he lets on. She had 71 million people vote for her. But the biggest number is 88 million. And that's the number of people registered to vote that did not. That's the second biggest problem, is that we are so checked out that we aren't participants in our own democracy, so to speak. But that among that 88% will be the biggest complainers, will be the biggest party poopers, so to speak. But I mean, listen, you were registered to vote, you could have voted, but you were so cynical. Voting is not voting for who you like. It's voting for the best of the two choices. Which one will serve me and my community most? And we missed that political education somewhere along the line. And I think that's the other biggest thing that we face now, is that it's hard enough to beat the other guy, but you have to beat yourself, because you got to first convince a lot of us to vote, because we don't see the purpose in it anymore. And I think that's kind of scary, my brother, because when you and I were coming up in a certain organization, that was one of our main tenets, was getting out and registering folks in our community to be participants in the process. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with a lot what you just discussed and stated. You know, it's kind of like in our political system, it's the two parties, instead of the race to the top to be better than the other side, it's the race to the bottom. When you have that two-party system, there is no ultimate incentive to really be better than the other party. Now, one thing I will add, I think the disinformation occurs on both sides.
Absolutely.
They work in different ways, you know, because both parties have different ideologies. And one of the biggest issues always fundamentally in my mind, and what I started to realize growing up as a young man, because I was pretty much raised, you know, all the older heads said, hey, vote Democrat, be a liberal, this and that. And one of the things that fundamentally always impacted me as I started getting older was, if I have a preset ideology or belief, how can I make real-time or realistic decisions in life? So basically, you're telling me I'm supposed to have these plan already set in my head, so it answers all the questions and situations and events that are occurring or that may occur in my life or in our society. It really doesn't make any sense. And I think that's the biggest issue that I have overall with the two-party system, because I and you as well know people that they're so in one particular ideology, they make every decision in their life based on it, where they live,
Mhm.
where they
Mhm.
vacation, the people they
Mhm.
talk to,
Mhm.
the career, the church they go to, which grocery
Yeah.
store they shop at, what type of music they listen to.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember a time where you watch movies and listen to entertainers and you never spoke about their political ideology. Um, I can remember as a kid, the first entertainer or actor that I remember hearing adults or I came across something about their political ideology was Charlton Heston. And I can remember around Easter time, I would love watching the Ten Commandments. I think ABC would show the Ten Commandments. And I don't know if I
Misinformation.
when I got on the well,
Those people.
that's a story for another day. But when I would get, I think maybe I read an article, read a book about him, or got on the internet or something, and I read that hey, he was hit. He had something to do with the NRA, and he was conservative and all that. And I remember, I'm like, oh, should I watch the movie? Should I follow him? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time, I thought I was a Democrat. I'm like,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
realized right away how stupid that sounded.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed the movie. I also enjoyed him playing in. I don't know if you've ever watched Planet of the Apes,
Oh yeah.
the original
Mhm.
movie franchise. One of my favorite ones. He played.
Damn dirty apes.
Yeah, he played Colonel Taylor. So one of
Mhm.
my favorite movies of all time. So I was like, that's stupid and that's idiotic. But I think people are that simplistic. You know, we're humans. We're at the top of the food chain. We have the most complex, biggest brains. We have ability to have more than one thought in our head, but yet we all, for not all, but a lot of people in America tend to live in what they call an echo chamber of their own ideas and thoughts.
Sure.
When events or things occur in our society, people just go to tribalism. They go to their side. The Republicans go to one side, the Democrats go to the other side, and they pretty much group think to solve the problem rather than meet in the middle to come up with what I would say pragmatic ways or be more pragmatic in solving something. And also I like to add, I think uh technology has definitely made a big impact in the divide. Uh, Basically, also not only just technology, just the podcasting arena. You look at for instance, on the Republican side, all of the Republican podcasters are doing very well, especially the top ones. Like they're raking in the money, the advertisements, and they're all in on basically telling people how bad the Democrats are, that they're evil. They're trying to bring us down. They're trying to destroy America. America's the worst place in the world to live. You
Mhm.
even look at Make America Great Again, which
Mhm.
I just recently found out that term isn't new. Ronald Reagan used that same term. Did you know that?
Yeah, and
I,
but for the same reasons.
yes, was but and then when they get in office, America's great, you know, but
Hmm.
they ran on Make America Great. So
Yeah.
even though the Republicans have won the White House, both houses, they're pretty much, in my opinion, you look at a lot of the podcasters, they're selling doom and gloom. They're
Hmm.
saying how horrible the Democrats are, rather than uh, the Republicans govern from the center and represent all people. They're basically doing what the Democrats would do if they were in office. They would go all in on their side and make sure they basically squash the Republicans at all attempts. rather than come together and make policies and things like that. So, and some recent polling of young people, basically a vast majority of them stated that they wish that there was more than the two-party system that we had. So young people definitely have recognized what you and I, being older, have realized here in America. And do you think we'll ever get another party that can compete with the two parties that we have?
Well, to jump in on, you made some excellent points. I will say that just like Make America Great Again is not new. The conversation that we're having right now is not new. It goes all the way back to post-Reconstruction, where you had several parties coming to fruition, a lot of them that still exist. They just don't have the numbers. I will say that people primarily like to feel comfortable, number one, and they like to feel in the know, even when they're not. So a lot of the strict party line voting comes from, and I remember being a kid and being 18 in my first election. That's really when I really got into politics, studying Adam Clayton Powell and people of that nature. And I was told by my dad, because I had this conversation with him, I said, okay, I know I'm voting for Clinton, but all the rest of those folks, I don't know them yet. He said, just vote Democratic, just straight down the line. So we are indoctrinated with a lot of that. And that may be the best advice to give an 18-year-old kid that don't know anything more than who's running for president, but all these others, just vote Democratic. And that kind of sticks with you because you get comfortable with it. Right. So you can be lazy and not do research on your own. You just because you voted for this guy, this Democrat, don't mean you have to vote for that one, especially if he ain't worthy of your vote. Another point I'd like to make is that throughout history, I'll take it back to the not so distant future. The Black Panther Party for self-defense. Most people totally missed the boat on what they were actually doing. It's the Black Panther Party, like the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. They were a political organization, and they not only ran successful campaigns locally, they also ran national campaigns. None of them nationally ever came to fruition, but they were able to get legislation impacted. One of the reasons our children eat lunch in public schools is because of some of their political activity. The reason sickle cell trait testing is mandatory is because a lot of their political action on a local level that's spread across the nation. Where I'm from, there was a third party called the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party with Fannie Lou Hamer. They actually went to the National Democratic Convention and got barred from entrance because at that time, like I had mentioned earlier, the Democratic Party was full of racists. We have a lot of examples of the third party system, but this is why I suggest to you and anybody listening that there's nothing that is impossible. And I'm going to tell you why. Like I mentioned earlier, 73 million people voted for President Trump. 71 million people voted for Vice President Harris. 88 million didn't vote. So I imagine that a lot of those people did not abstain from voting just because they weren't interested. It's because they didn't like either one of the candidates. So imagine if you could galvanize that 88 million people to come together, strategize, and come up with a valid third party. That party would overnight have a chance to win with 88 million registered voters behind it. So,
but you know what will happen? You'll have the Republicans and Democrats will probably make a secret behind the door deal to take down that third party. I'm willing to bet for that.
Absolutely. But you have to have the right
Yeah.
people. Let's say, for example, I'm going to talk about a group of people from another demographic that gets it right. They don't get a lot right, but they get some things right. Okay. The statistical breakdown in the United States per race, African Americans are about 12 to 13% of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So we shouldn't be able to win any national elections just us voting for one person. That still wouldn't work. So you have to ask yourself the question, how did Obama win? Because when you study the statistical breakdown of all your typical stereotypical white evangelical Christian who said they would never vote for Obama, the numbers don't add up, which means we're telling you we're not going to vote for that Negro. But because he wants to give you affordable health care, because he wants to give you an educational system that provides more than just a desk and a babysitter, and that benefits you, that's in your own self-interest. They telling you they're not going to vote for him, but they go into their voting booth, pull the curtain, and they vote for him because it's in their own best self-interest. He couldn't have got in no other way. You understand what I'm saying?
That makes a good point.
On our side, we have to think like that. You can't vote for somebody because of what they look like. You know what I'm saying? You have to listen to them speak and talk. The next point I wanted to make is dog whistles. We have to become politically astute enough to hear dog whistles. When President Trump says he wants to make America great again, he's speaking to a marginalized American population that misses the old days. What does the old days mean to them? Old white men in charge, women in the background, the minorities, they playing sports and being the burden bearers for the real citizens of this nation. When he got it from President Reagan, I don't think Trump is politically astute enough to have studied that. Somebody brought that to him. When Ronald Reagan first said he wanted to make America great again, do you know where he said it? He said it in Greenwood, Mississippi. It was his first political, his stump. Or what do they call it? When you're on the stump, his first campaign. He said he wanted to make America great again, and he wanted to protect old women and children from these bucks that are running around, terrorizing this country. Now that's all code word. He didn't say the N word, but we know what buck means. So these are the dog whistles that we must listen to. The Democratic Party needs to develop some. So there's a way to address certain issues like the LGBT community. There's certain ways to address the border using dog whistles, where you're talking to a people that only know what you're talking about without alienating another group of people that want to vote for you, but you scaring the hell out of them. You know what I'm saying? They don't want that. They don't want that idea of America. Therefore, you are really running them towards the guy that will turn it to what they remember growing up, for good or for bad. Because whenever America was great, it wasn't always so great for a number of us. And we have to recognize the subtle nuances in listening to a politician and what they really mean and who they really talking to, if that makes sense. Go ahead, my brother.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good point. I never thought about it from that point of view. And definitely when I was watching a documentary a couple of days ago and I heard that mention, it's a documentary about Ronald Reagan in his first term and using that term, make America great again. I was like, wow, okay. That's where they came from. Okay. So
do you know where he first, not to interrupt, just a quick side note, do you know where he became where he got national prominence in politics? He was the mayor. He was the governor of California, right?
Right, and governor of California.
Do you know how he became nationwide? The Black Panther Party stormed the Capitol in California, and he changed the gun laws because they were able to freely carry them then. That's when he went nationwide, and he was saw as that white savior saving us from these black bucks. That's what he was referring to. But go ahead. He was able to capitalize.
Interesting. Did not know that. I knew he was governor of California, but I did not know that other point. All right, so it brings us to my next next question rather. Why does it seem like now in our political system, rudeness, sexist comments, and racist comments are now seem like they're being rewarded, when in the past those things really weren't in politics?
I agree with you, and give me the liberty to disagree with you just a little bit.
Okay.
In polite society, since we have come of age, we have determined that there are certain things you can't say to a woman. Mm-hmm. There are certain things that you cannot say to a minority or a person of this sexual persuasion. Most of that is governed by the workplace, and that has been instilled in us that in polite company, you don't act like that because you get fired. You know what I'm saying? Before that time, though, ask a woman how they were talked to on a regular basis. Ask a woman what kind of things a man could say that would be so ridiculous and so sexist today that was commonplace. All you have to do is go and watch old television like Archie Bunker, right? You could say whatever you wanted to to a woman. You could touch her if you wanted to. You could say whatever you want to a black person. This is making America great again.
So this a lot of this is
this guy in the office. He's returned it to that. So you hearing all this stuff, it's not new. We just in civilized society have determined this is inappropriate. He has lifted the cover back off of that and say, hey man, go back to doing that. So you can say whatever you want to about a woman that's inappropriate. You can use whatever kind of racial epithet you want because he's made it okay. That's the America they want, and he's giving it to them. And they won the election, so to the victor go the spoils. You're able to do that. I think that's what a lot of those old Americans that really follow him, even though they're out of his tax bracket, meaning that they will suffer for having voted for him. But there's an old saying, I'll forget what you did to me. I'll forget that you cheated me, you lied me, but I'll never forget how you make me feel. And he makes them feel good by allowing them to do the sort of things that we would have frowned upon just 12 years ago, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. In education, we have a term called hidden rules. So hidden rules are those rules and things kids are supposed to follow along with adults. You don't talk about them. You don't teach them. They're not written down anywhere. When you break them, they're not necessarily against the law, but when you do break them and don't follow them, you make people feel uncomfortable. So it's like in the past 25 or 30 years, the hidden rules or those societal norms or those social norms that were in place, they're eroding.
Absolutely.
You're just, people are able to say, especially online. I think social media has particularly made people, in my opinion, cowards.
Absolutely.
I know oftentimes I'll go on Facebook or even Instagram or even YouTube, watching video links, and I like to read comments, and I'm curious of what people say about comments. And I find a lot of comments that, and I personally don't know these people, but to me, I always say a person is a coward when they go.
Absolutely.
When they
keyboard coward, keyboard gang.
They go real DEFCON 12 with some of their comments, and they're very insensitive. They're rude, sexist, racial. I don't have an issue with a person coming at me for one of my opinions or at someone else, but go at them for their opinion or their political ideology. Don't go sexist. Don't go racial. That's weak. Now, in fairness, those individuals may believe in those things. So they're, as we say, standing on business, but you get no points for saying it on the keyboard or on the internet.
Absolutely not. I was always taught if you don't profit from something, why do it? And grandmama always told you don't say everything you think. You leave the quiet part quiet. But to your point, even 12 years ago, Brother Johnson, you have to admit that kind of vitriol on the line did not exist. You'd be kicked off, you'd be blocked. There's a certain freedom. I give you an example. Both social media and verbal. Elon Musk had a young man that was fired and rehired in his past political week cycle. And they found some old, after he had gotten his job, they had found some old posts that he made.
Hey, real quick. I know what you're about to say. Those posts are from no more than a year ago.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, they wasn't that old.
Some of the political pundits tried to say from when he was a young man. It was just
yeah. Well, he's a young man now, so it's relative. He ain't like 22 or 24. But I guess both two things can be true at the same time. But he says that I was a racist before racism was cool. And he said a lot of other things that I won't mention, but that's okay. But in this current world we live in, you cannot even in a governmental capacity use the word DEI or equality. Make that make sense. It doesn't. It's the way it is. Things do not have to make sense to be the way that they are. The second thing is, it's her name Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, who prosecuted Trump and won and is seeking to recover about $485 million from Trump cheating the state of New York. One of Trump's lawyers around election time came out live on TV and said that if you do not cease and desist with your efforts in collecting this money, we're going to show your black ass what Trump is all about on TV during a press conference. This is what we're talking about. He has freed people to be able to say the things. He could have argued his point without using that kind of language. But the point is, it's okay to do it. And what a lot of people are finding out is that a lot of the people that they thought they knew, they really didn't know. Because you can only know a person so well at work, at church. You don't go home with them. The majority of their lives are spent away from you. And the things that you write online shows who you really are. And because you're freed up, you think, to say what you want to say in a free manner, it's kind of showing you who a lot of these people are if you are one of those low information people that thought they were something other than what they have shown. Some of us don't have that problem, you know what I'm saying? But it's quite amazing to watch. But we are literally, this has set us back in terms of decorum and respectfulness, and that old saying that I treat everybody like a lady and a gentleman, not because they are, but because I am. That's kind of out the window. You understand what I'm saying? So I agree with you on a lot of those points. I hope I didn't go off on a tangent.
No, sir, not at all. So will there be a political figure that will arise in the near or distant future that will kind of rebalance the political system? Because I agree with you, there'll probably never be a third or fourth or fifth political party in our system. That's probably never going to happen. But I wonder, will there be another president, whether it's Republican or Democrat, that rebalances the political system and makes it more of working together? because Trump could do that. If he wanted to tomorrow, he can say, you know what? All of these personal attacks or this vengeance that I'm going on or this meanness or whatever people want to call it, he could stop all of that and govern from what they call the center. He can reach across both sides of the aisle, say, hey, we have common interests here and here. Let's give a little, let's take a little less, or this or that, and work in the middle. And it's a win-win for both parties, and it's a win-win for all Americans. Do you see that individual come in, or does that individual may already be in politics currently?
Not only do I think it's going to happen, it is going to happen. Just a quick analysis of history. You can go back as far as we have had elections where there was something traumatic that happened, and the next guy righted the ship, from Roosevelt to Kennedy to LBJ, to people coming in and bringing everybody together after war times, after the Great Depressions. Look at just the last president, Biden. This conversation was a whole lot different when he took over a country that had lost millions of people to COVID, that had gone down so far in the world's eye and view, the things that he tore down and ripped apart. The next guy was able to right the ship and fix it until things out of his control, so to speak, like his physical condition, possibly mental, kind of turned that on his head. So absolutely nothing new is under the sun. What happened in the past is going to happen again. The key is finding that guy. And I also, Brother Johnson, have learned in my old age, never say never. Because at one point, the Republican Party was like the fourth or fifth party. You had the Whig Party. You had the I have to go back and look at it, but it hadn't. We may have always had two dominant political parties, but they haven't always been the Republicans and the Democrats. You never know what's coming. I can see the Republican Party returning to its origin and this MAGA thing becoming a third party that beats everybody. I can actually see that happening, where MAGA becomes something else. You understand what I'm saying? I sent you a text earlier, I think it was last week, and I was telling you about Ice Dickerson. A lot of people in your hometown drive up and down Dickerson Road, and they don't know who that guy is and never stop to wonder.
Hey, I never knew until you sent me that message who he was.
Yeah. I just got that kind of mind. If I'm driving on Thompson Lane, man, who the hell is Thompson? I just got to know that. You know what I'm saying? I'm weird like that. But Ice Dickerson, did you know he was involved in founding a third party? It was called the Justice Party, and with their main focus was retirement pay for former slaves. Imagine that. Like, if you were a former slave and you were 70 years old, they wanted the government to grant you a $500 payment and a $15 payment every month for the rest of your life. If you were 50 to 60, they would grant you a $300 payment and an $8 payment a month for the rest of your life. That's good stuff. Of course, it didn't have the numbers behind it. And also considering the fact that in the Deep South, in the Jim Crow South, even though we constitutionally had the right to vote, we know that the laws in the Jim Crow system either pitting violence against you or giving you some kind of test that tested your literacy. We couldn't have won that election, so he appealed to Northern whites, but of course it didn't go much further than an ideology. But when you have those type of people in much dire living situations that we currently are experiencing, that kind of fortitude, imagine somebody now with that. They could absolutely, all it takes is the right person to galvanize enough people away from the current political parties they're in and get enough of that 88 million that didn't vote and give them a reason to vote. And man, it's easier than you might think it is. It's just you have to be willing, and you got to have that right personality to do it, if that makes sense. But I can actually see it happening, not just rebalancing everything, but a third party. People forget about Ross Perot. Perot, I forget what his party was, but he turned that election upside down. And if it wasn't for him entering it, Clinton wouldn't have won that. You know what I'm saying? He robbed votes from Daddy Bush. And that's the power. And we ain't talking about 1 or 2 votes. We talking about a couple million. Well, when you look at the statistical breakdown, you say, oh, he got whooped. No, he got beaten. But those 2 or 3 million people that did vote for him skewed the vote the other way for the other guy because he took them from Bush. Bush may have won with those votes, but just his presence alone determined the outcome of that election. And I think that's where, realistically, a legitimate third party has to come from. They have to come from the standpoint where it may take us a couple decades to actually win. We can become so powerful that we influence who wins and who loses, and we will promise to back the better of 2 evils, if that makes sense at all. I can absolutely see that happening. You just have to believe that it can.
Yes, I definitely. It'll be interesting when it happens. I don't think there'll ever be a third party. I think the 2 parties, like I said earlier, if a third party even gets a chance and looks like they're going to be successful, I think both the Republican and Democratic leaders will have a behind closed door meeting and they'll do something to sabotage or defeat that other party. Going back to Ross Perot in the 92 presidential election, I just looked it up. He got, and I didn't realize he got this much. He got 18.9% of the vote, which is you round up, that's 19%.
That's all Bush's. That's all potential Bush voters.
So he got 19, basically over 19 million, almost 20 million votes. Bush got 39, a little bit over 39 million, which is 37.4% of the vote. Clinton got almost 5 million, like 44.9 million, which is 43% of the votes. So you're right there, Ross Perot. I didn't realize he got that many votes.
Absolutely. And we'll speaking of the Gore, like we started, we was talking about Gore Bush. Who's the guy that he was a third party candidate during that election, and it made it closer than it should have been. Gore should have been a runaway winner, but this is the opposite. Perot in that Bush Clinton election was the alternative to the Republican Party. This guy was the alternative to the liberals, and he had gosh dog it, he was an automobile guy. Do you remember this guy? I think his party may have been called the Green Party or something. But he hurt Gore a lot by just his presence, because he was a liberal and he was a counter. If you don't like Gore and his policies, vote for me, and that split his vote terribly. Do you remember that guy?
I don't remember the guy, but looking at the Gore and Bush percentages, man, it was close. Gore won the popular vote, which still baffles me that it just baffles me that we even collect the popular vote. You're right, it means nothing. It's the electoral college that really impact the election. But some people could make the argument, I kind of agree, we should be going on just popular vote. Get rid of the electoral system. That's really what it should all be. But Gore won the popular vote by
Ralph Nader. That was his name.
Okay, Ralph Nader. Yes, I do remember Ralph Nader. I do remember that name. I do remember. Gore won the popular vote by less than 400, 350, 400,000, somewhere in there. But the percentage, so basically Gore got 48.4% of the popular vote, and Bush got 47.9. So it was tight.
razor thin.
Razor thin.
Now here's my point. If you looked up Ralph Nader, how much did he got? If it's anything more than 2%, than 1%, he would have given Gore the election just by his absence. And that's how powerful a third party can be. Take out the fact of them actually winning. They can actually sway the vote. They have the power to sway the vote from one side to the other just by jumping in. Because he only needed to get 1.5% of the vote to take it from, to take that from Gore, if it's that close.
So he was the Green Party. I think you were right. I think you mentioned the Green Party. So he got, it looks like he got 2.8 million votes, so almost 3 million
votes.
That's
it, my brother. That's it.
So
with that 2.8, Gore wins. Runaway.
So 2.7% of the vote. I did not realize he got, that's a significant number, being that the popular vote was that close.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Democrats, and I hate to keep just saying Democrats, but I'm saying that because that's what most of us identify with. We have to get out of this mentality of the popular vote thing. Now, I agree with you. I think it should be just like 11th grade government. You know what I'm saying? If 10 people voted and 9 voted for you, you win. But we don't have that system. So you constantly hear, Hillary Clinton had the popular vote, or so-and-so had the popular. Who talk like that? Losers. That's a loser's mentality. If the strategy must meet the game. So what does the other side do? They don't even go certain places that don't have enough electoral power to sway a vote one way or another. They concentrate on certain areas, and they know I win these 3 states. I got it. Who cares if you win by 100? Who cares that more people like you? I win. The name of the game is to win. We have to develop. I think a lot of times liberals are too nice, and they want to play the game in a certain way to be liked, to be popular. Them folks over there don't care nothing about the popular vote. They gonna do nothing but lie and say they won by a landslide anyway. That's what he does. So you have to develop these strategies. If this is the game that we have, and I don't see it constitutionally being changed anytime soon, you've got to win those states. And that goes back to strategy. And I'm gonna get off of this because I know it's a sore spot for some people. Who makes the decisions in the Democratic Party? Like, you had a guy, you had to win Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You had to win. You could not have won it. Why didn't you pick as your running mate the guy from Pennsylvania? Why didn't you do that? It doesn't make sense. And the guy that they picked, he's a nice enough guy, but it was amateur hour. He wasn't ready for the moment. Who's making these decisions? Our strategy, I'm not trying to get all worked up, but we got a long ways to go, man. It's just a horror of errors and missteps, and you sit back and you wonder why you lost. And the people that are in the know and they understand political science, sometimes, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say nothing at all. And sometimes people would, in my everyday, would say, "Hey, man, what do you think are her chances?" And I'd just be like, but I knew she ain't got a chance. I mean, they bumbling this thing, man. This is awful. And I think part of it is we too nice. We're just too nice. Sometimes you got to have that guy that get in the dirt and is not ashamed to get, his hands dirty and play that game and win that game. But I'm gonna get off of that, man.
Yeah, you're right in a lot of ways. I don't ultimately know what the Democrats do, who decides their strategy and what policies they're trying to set forward for the American people. But they definitely got to do a better job.
The old guys like James Carville that'll cuss your ass out and drink a scotch on you while he cussing you out. That had these masterful political scientists and technicians. I don't. Who is the equivalent of that guy now? Yeah,
They don't have it. And Democrats get caught up in issues or policies that you can't win. With transgender women.
Leave that alone.
You can't win it. And it's not a simple solution or answer to it. Like you can't win it.
It's not.
And I actually think politically you can support a group, a minority group of individuals. Because let's be honest, Republicans are scaring Americans and making it seem like there is, like in women's sports, there's this explosion of transgender men competing on all levels. It's not. It's such a small number. it's like a very minute number.
Right.
Yeah. But Democrats, rather than say that and maybe be in a position where you offend the transgender community, maybe they're fearful they may offend the transgender community. They don't say anything. They let the Republicans say that and make it seem like it's 25% of women are transgender men or transgender women competing in women's sports, basically, when that's not the case.
Right. You know, and that's messaging. That's messaging and strategy. Part of the pastor's job in church on Sunday is to scare the hell out of you in doing right. And when you walk out of there, you've been preached such fire and brimstone that you act accordingly. And part of their strategy is to scare people enough to come into my side because I'm now seen as the protector. That's an excellent strategy. You know, too bad it was against me, but we need strategies like that. I'll give you two examples, one from sports, one from politics. Regardless of what your politics may be, you certainly cannot deny that Lyndon Baines Johnson, I mentioned him earlier, a Democratic white man, certainly had racist views and all of that, but he certainly pushed through a lot of legislation that people like you and I benefit from, right? Now, being a Democrat at a time when that party was full of white racists in the deep South, from the state of Texas, Martin Luther King would come talk to him and he would work behind the scenes. And King would say, I need you to go on TV. He said, man, I can't do that. You know, I'm trying to help you. If you want me to be here next week, I can't. Those people going to push me out of office if I do that. And they had enough political wherewithal to understand I don't take that personal. You understand what I'm saying? I would tell you, and I'm not going to mention his name, but Obama had a certain friend who, when he was going on Meet the Press, they gave him a list of questions and they asked him how he felt about this certain person. And it was fair because they was asking Hillary and everybody else the same question, but it's unfair because President Obama was friends with the guy. So he felt awful. And the night before, he called this guy and he asked him, hey man, they gonna ask me this question and I'm gonna lose the election if I answer it with my heart. So I'm just calling you to let you know that I'm going to be saying these things because I have to say them. And the guy he called said, if you don't answer it like that, you're not the man for the job. And you're not who I thought you were, because it's bigger than petty relationships. We need you in the office, so you do what you have to do. I don't take it personally. And even if I did and you cared, that means you ain't the person for the job, if that makes sense. My sports analogy, Coach Bear Bryant was playing against the University of Southern California, who had been out west. They already had quite a few African-American young men on their team, one of them being the older brother of Randall Cunningham, Wham Bam Cunningham. And they went to Alabama and whooped Bear Bryant. And Bear Bryant was heard saying on the sideline, I got to get me one of them. And so somebody that heard him asked him in the press conference after the game, do you think you need to start recruiting young black men to play on your team? If you're going to be playing teams out west, that's what you got coming to you. And he said, I really do, but I won't be the first because I won't have a job next year, but I also won't be the third. So I need somebody to do it first and make it okay, and then I come in and do it. That's what Lyndon Baines Johnson was telling King. Go protest, go rebel rouse, go get on TV, show the nation how bad this really is, because they don't see it. In a pre-internet world, a lot of well-meaning white people never knew any of that stuff was happening. And I know it's hard for somebody nowadays to know. He said, you've got to agitate enough to make me act, but I can't act and keep my job, if that makes sense. And we have to be politically astute enough to understand that there are certain issues that I'm going to fight for, but I can't put it on Front Street because there's too many people with legitimate concerns like myself and legitimate fears that will cause them not to vote for you and do the extreme and vote for the other guy who's reassuring me he ain't gonna let none of that stuff happen. So if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Thinking the nod is more than just subtlety. There has to be a certain sophistication of, hey, brother, I ain't got to dap you up, but I can give you a little head nod. I got your back here.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I never thought about it from that political viewpoint, but definitely, hey, I enjoyed the information, brother. Your insight is amazing. But before we end the podcast, I got like two quick stories I want to run by you and just give your I would like to hear your take on them.
Okay.
And these are just
sure?
things.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Are you sure? I'm never surprised by the invite. I'm only surprised by how long I'm allowed to stay and if I'm re-invited. So
you'll definitely get
the ask me a question, I'm gonna answer it, brother.
You'll definitely get the revite. All right, so these are just some stories that have happened here in America, taken off the hot off the press, as they say, or hot off the internet. Just some key stories or things just popped up on social media. I don't know if you heard it. The first one, and this has probably been a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. Michael Jordan's son was arrested. He's Marcus Jordan. He's 34 years old. He's arrested in Orange County, Florida, on DUI charges and cocaine possession. And what's interesting about this story, not only was he stopped, when they stopped him, he basically ran the car off the road. It almost seemed like a rural area. And he had the car stuck on a train track. So not at a crossing where you go across where the road is even and you just ride over, but he was like where the train tracks go through past the crossing. So one side of the car was basically stuck. And when the police on the cop cam, what do you call it? The body cam, when they walked up on him, when they were engaging him, he was basically pressing down on the gas and trying to get the car over the train track. And finally the cops got him to relax and say, hey, it's not gonna happen. And he's like, hey, I got to get my car. It's stuck. But this particular story wasn't a big story. I personally don't think it's a big story. If it was Michael Jordan, it would have been a big story. What do you think about this? His son obviously having this problem with getting caught up in this DUI. There have been rumors. I don't know if you ever heard these rumors out on social media. There's a video where he's supposed to be outside a restaurant on the side of a pool, and he's supposed to be bending over and sniffing something. And the particular rumor on the video is that he's doing some cocaine or something. But it may have well been true now that we know he got busted for DUI and cocaine possession. So what is your view and take on this particular story?
That's the second time I heard that story. I didn't know the particulars until you just explained it, but somebody was explaining it to me at work. And the way they put it, Michael Jordan's son got arrested. When the cop came to the door, he kept saying, "Do you know who I am? I'm Michael Jordan's son."
Yeah, he was saying that. He was pretty much out there. He was.
Okay. I didn't know about the train track and all that other stuff. I think, man, it's very difficult to be the son of a very prominent man on several levels. You have to live up to his legacy. And if you got to think, man, if you Michael Jordan's son or LeBron's son or Muhammad Ali's son, man, that's impossible. You almost have to find your lane somewhere else to achieve that amount of greatness, if it is possible. It sounds like he's crying out for help in some kind of way. For a 34-year-old man to behave like that sounds like something a 19-year-old would do. Sounds like he's trying to get his father's attention, or he's trying to, call out and say everything ain't okay with me, and I need some help. I don't know. What do you think about that? And if drugs are in play, it could possibly be that.
I mean, yeah, it could be some truth to what you're saying. I mean, he's a young man. He's independent of himself. It has nothing to do with his father. I personally don't particularly think it's a big story.
Well, it wouldn't even be news if it wasn't for the fact of who he was. It wouldn't.
Oh yeah, to be honest, it really was underreported, which it should be, should have been. Like I said, it wasn't a big story. If it was Michael Jordan, it'd been a big story. One of the reasons why I think this story was underreported was what is Michael Jordan politically? How is he politically?
I don't think anybody knows.
He's pretty much apolitical.
Yeah,
you really don't hear stories of Michael Jordan being political.
That's a business decision,
right? And I'm pretty sure behind.
Remember, he said back in the 90s,
Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, which is true, and that's his choice. To be apolitical, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's the reason why this probably wasn't a big national story. I saw it on ESPN's website, CNN, but they didn't talk about it on the actual Sports Center, unless I missed it. I didn't see them bring it up, but it was on the website. But I look at this story from a different lens. If Michael Jordan was political, let's say if he was left-leaning or right-leaning, this would have been covered by the other side. And I'll use this example. LeBron James. Pretty much everything LeBron James does, whether people think it's good or bad, is covered by which news media, which company, who covered
Fox. The liberal.
So Fox will cover his story. Fox will always, for example, his son getting into the NBA, that was covered by Fox News from a negative point of view.
Okay. Let's see where you're going.
If LeBron James' son, Bronny, was DUI, cocaine possession, this would be all over Fox News. They would be like, hey, he's a horrible parent. He needs to retire, focus on his son's life. He's played 21, 22 years. But since Michael Jordan is pretty much apolitical, doesn't really say anything about politics, it's an underreported story, which it should be an underreported story. It's really not, in my opinion, a big story. But I wish the best for the young man. And like you said, a lot of what you said could be true. I mean, he's having some issues. He's calling out for help. It's definitely not a good road he's going down if he's
Driving on train
drinking.
track.
He got on a train track.
That tells me you trying to end it. Ain't too
Cocaine
many good
involved.
things can happen on a train track.
And there's also a young lady in the car with him. The young lady, if you go back and watch the body cam of the officer, she didn't seem impaired. She seemed very calm, cool, collective. He Marcus Jordan was never aggressive in the video, but he was clearly, hey, you know who I am. He made several statements. Hey, you know what type of car this is? I got to get this car off the train tracks. I can't remember which, it was obviously a high-end brand. So, he kept stating that over and over again. But hopefully this is a wake-up call. It's an embarrassment, obviously. And, he can get some help and things like that. But the last story, this one just broke in the last 24 hours. I don't know if you've been following the stuff with Diddy. And then all of the other allegations, people suing these civil cases. There's a law firm here where I live in Houston, Texas, that's run by a lawyer named Tony Busby. I don't know if you're familiar with that name. He's a very prominent, high-profile lawyer. But back in November of last year, there was a woman who is, I think they have her as not anonymous, but they have her name protected. Because it's a sex crime. She basically alleging that Jay-Z, along with P. Diddy and some unnamed woman, basically raped her at the age of 13 at a after awards party in New York City. Now, the crazy thing about this entire story, I'm gonna give you some back information. First of all, she was 13 at the time. Her friend, who was 18 or 19, I believe, and I hope I'm getting that right, drove her from upstate New York. They didn't live in New York City. So they drove from upstate New York down to New York City to attend or sneak in, because the accuser, she's 13 years old. So for her to sneak in along with her adult friend to get into one of these after parties. So allegedly they went to this particular after party, and the accuser lawyer mentioned in the case, in the civil case against Jay-Z and Puff Daddy, about these other artists that were there. She had conversations with these individuals. This one particular artist, on the date that this after party is supposed to occur, 25 some years ago, he basically came out and said, we weren't even there at this event. We were on tour somewhere in the Midwest. So that was one strike against this whole thing. Also, she alleged that after the assault/rape, the dad picked her up outside at a gas station or something, drove her back the whole 5 hours. The dad, on an actual interview, stated that if something like that had happened to his daughter, he would remember it. They would have had a conversation about it. He doesn't even remember driving her 5 hours back to New York. So there's another strike. I can't remember. There's some other sketchy information about it. But they just, in the last 24 hours, the case has been dropped by Tony Busby. So what do you think about, because there are a lot of stories out there about Diddy linking Diddy to other artists about these sexual things are going on. So what do you think about this case coming up and being dropped?
I'm going to try to say this in a certain way, not to get you and I in any trouble. But I agree with it. Based on the evidence that you just provided, it should have been dropped, because all you have to go on are the facts. Right. And if you can prove that the accused weren't even there, the case is over. You bring in a material witness, the father, who says, I would have remembered that. I don't even remember driving the 5 hours. That's the second strike.
And real quick, I didn't mention this. The 18-year-old friend that drove her 5 hours from upstate New York to New York City, has died, and she can't even come on, be on the record and say, hey, this occurred. So that was another strike. So all of these things and the evidence that she possibly could present in a civil case doesn't exist. I'm confused why they even decided to file this civil case. And this is a high profile lawyer. Like
he should have known better, unless it was
aware.
A money grab, unless it was just a money grab. Because sometimes if you just try with success,
shakedown, I think they call it shakedown.
With mega rich people, sometimes it's just easier for them to give you a couple million just for the headache. And it actually saved me money in the long run when you accrue all the court costs and stuff. I'm reminded of the Bill Cosby situation. And I'm not going to get into the guilt or innocence of that. But what I will mention is that there were several copycats who saw this as a money grab and let me get in on it. And they were quickly disproven. Some of the women were people that he actually had a legitimate relationship with. And they were able, with phone records and so forth, to say, hey, when did you say he, abused you? Monday, such and such. Well, we got a record of you going back over there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You see, you understand what I'm saying? This don't add up. So, sometimes you have to take that sounds horrible. Whenever you hear that a 13-year-old may have been abused in such a manner, your instincts kick in and you want to protect them and bring justice. But sometimes you have to, the professionals, they take their emotions out of it. And it's just the facts. The facts say this didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Right. And it's her side to prove it. Now, I'm getting older and wise. Now I had a nice little joke, but I ain't gonna say it. But it would be totally inappropriate. But there's another artist. There's another artist now that is involved with those two guys. If he was in it, I'd be like, oh no, reopen it.
But, reopen it. But Jay-Z did something very interesting in this case, and I agree with you. Generally, people in Jay-Z's situation, they probably do settle cases like this. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's the percentage of people, people in this situation that settle, but based on past history, a lot of them do settle. But when this allegation originally came out back in last fall, Jay-Z immediately said, I want the district attorney to take this to trial. If you feel this strongly about this civil case, let's try this in criminal court. Mm-hmm. Generally, people don't ask for that.
No.
They try to play it out in civil court cases. And I was watching it and letting it play out and kind of see. But to me, that was telling. When a person says something like that, and then when you heard the interview on MSNBC and they blacked out the woman's face and distorted her voice, it didn't sound right. I'm questioning MSNBC why they even aired that interview.
Well, because people
it was terrible.
Interested in salacious topics. But I will say, whenever I'm and this I'm gonna try to be quick. This is what scares me about our legal system. When it works, it works. But I come from a sociology background. That term was coined by W.B. Du Bois. Before him, it was called social science. It is a science. And in science, you're only interested in the facts. You're not interested in anybody's opinion or their emotion. And a lot of people believe that they have the right to an opinion. You don't. You have to earn an opinion. What do you know? What have you read? It ain't important what you think or what you thought or what somebody told you. It sounds horrible, especially when anytime, somebody that young has potentially been abused. When you look at the people involved, it certainly gets your attention. I'm just interested in the facts. Once I heard that the people accused weren't even there and they could prove it factually, we don't have to talk no more. It's over. You understand what I'm saying? So I look at it from that standpoint. The part that scares me the most about the American justice system, which is one of the best in the world, but the part that scares me is in the science world. If you enter the laboratory and you make an accusation that something is one way, it is not your job to prove it right. It's your job to prove it wrong first. And if you fail to prove it wrong, then you know you're on to something. I'm on to a scientific discovery.
Mm-hmm.
If you walk into a science laboratory or any science classroom throughout America's universities and colleges, and you made a statement as a point of fact, like this is my hypothesis, and the teacher asks you, well, how did you come to this conclusion? And you said, because I saw it. Do you know they would laugh you out of there and you would get an F, because eyewitness account is the lowest form of scientific inquiry, because everybody sees something different, and it has been proven that your eyes lie to you and tell your brain what it wants to see, because sometimes when you see something, you can't make sense out of it, and your brain makes you think you saw something just to make it make sense. In a court of law, the highest form of witness testimony is eyewitness testimony. And 10 people can see something 10 different ways. That's what scares me. That's what scares me about it. But I'm glad that those guys had good enough lawyers to just stick with the facts. You can't beat facts. You just can't. And I hope whatever that young lady is looking for, I hope she's all right. You know what I'm saying? That's not the way to go about it. But sort of like Michael Jordan might be crying for help too, man. You know, if you would be willing to go that far on something you made up, or there could be some mental stuff going on and she really think that happened to her. And it may have, it just was Joe Blow and so. It wasn't Jay-Z and Diddy. He done a lot of things, but it don't sound like he did that.
Yep. Well, that's a good point. Well, brother, before we get out of here and end this episode, man, could you I want to give you the opportunity to plug your books and tell people where they can purchase your 2 books.
Okay. I have and I appreciate that. I have 2 books on Amazon currently. The first one is called I Only Have an Hour, a look at Mississippi through the lens of a Black college football cultural framework. And basically what that is about is the subject of HBCU football, specifically in the state of Mississippi, where I grew up. Unlike a lot of places, Mississippi was so racist, even into my childhood, that there was no mistaking the point that Ole Miss did not want you to come there. And Mississippi State didn't want you to come there. And the University of Southern Mississippi didn't want you to come there. So Jackson State, Alcorn, Mississippi Valley, those were our heroes, where you could go to Tennessee, and it's not strange to find young African Americans that root for Vanderbilt and UT. That was not the case where I grew up. So I painted a picture of us rooting for teams that you wouldn't normally root for. I get so offended when I'm talking to coworkers and they say, "Who is your favorite team?" I could say Jackson State and Lane College. And they, yeah, but who are your real favorite teams? Like that ain't good enough. That's a slap in my face. I just told you who I root for. You understand what I'm saying? I can name names that are bigger than any of the names that you could name for your team, and I've seen them play. Steve McNair, Jerry Rice, so on and so forth. So I painted a picture in this book going back in time where I juxtaposed my 2 favorite topics, Black college football and the civil rights struggle. And I showed how these 2 intertwined, how Grambling would come to town with Coach Robinson, and he had guys who would go on to found the Deacons of Defense playing on his football team. I showed how this game of a Grambling game against Jackson State affected the state. It impacted it so much so that it not only led to them playing this top tier game in the whites only stadium, which is now their stadium. It came on the backs of people being indicted for the Emmett Till murder, and a lot of guys on that team had also played or knew the young African American man that died with the two Jewish civil rights workers. You know the episode on
the Freedom Riders.
Yeah, they had to play a football game after hearing this news, and they actually knew the brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know you is, friends. And I kind of paint these pictures of how the two worlds work together in this little microcosm. That's a whole field of study that anybody outside of those areas wouldn't even know about. The second book is They Were on My Mind, Pullman Porters, Policy Men, Prize Fighters, Writers, Black Cowboys, Blues Men, and the Root Doctor. And it basically paints a picture of deep Southern, deep South African-American culture, a lot of the colloquialisms that you use every day that you do not know was a product of our invention, music, religious practices that came straight from the continent that we continue to do and use, and we don't know why we do it. It's just embedded in us from being passed down from generation to generation with no recognizable reason. Is just something we do. But those are what those two books are about, and they're currently on Amazon, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
No problem, brother. I'll make sure in the podcast description, I'll drop a link. I'll get that link for you. So when people click on this podcast, they can check out some more information about those books and purchase those books if they decide they're interested in them. But thank you once again, brother. I hope that we can do this again many, many more times. Definitely enjoyed it. It's conversations like some of the old conversations we would have when I lived in Nashville, when you would come over to the house and we would, break bread, have some drinks and talk for hours and just joke and, just debate and go back and forth about some historical things. And I know those that are going to listen to this podcast are probably going to say we agree on a lot of stuff, but actually we do agree on a lot, but we have some disagreements. But one of the things I've always respected about you is that when a person disagreed with you, it never got personal. It was always about facts. It's always about history. Hey, this is why. Hey, this is why I think this way. And also, I do believe you're a person that even when a person has a different opinion other than you learn from that opinion that's different from you.
Absolutely.
I think we all should challenge ourselves to dialogue with people that have a different opinion than we have, to resharpen or to strengthen our opinion or to reshape it.
Yeah. If you're in a room and everybody thinks just like you, you'll never move anywhere in a progressive manner. You have to have people that challenge you, and if you're right, your thesis will stand on its own merit. It'll be proven right, but it's got to be able to be brought through the rigor of scholastic scrutiny, if you know what I mean. And if you think you're right about something, those are some of the most delightful conversations to have with somebody that totally disagrees with you. It's pretty boring, Brother Johnson, when you're in the room and everybody think the same way and act the same way. That ain't my crowd. You understand?
I personally like, and I often tell my wife this, I love talking to people that disagree with me, that have a different background, that have a different viewpoint, because I love that back and forth, that conversation. It excites me to go back and forth with the information and factual statements, historical context, real world examples of what I'm talking about. I find it interesting. And I definitely, like you said, I find it boring to only talk with people that agree with me. Like, it's really no point of me to have long conversations if we agree on everything. We can have conversations, but the people I disagree with, I probably find a little more interesting to talk to.
Can I leave you with one last thing?
Yes, sir.
When you're talking with someone, and here's the difference. and this is where people like you and I do not fit in this category. If I'm talking to you, Brother Johnson, and you tell me that giraffes can fly, and I'm saying, okay, that's an interesting opinion. How did you arrive upon that? And as we continue to talk, I'm able to show you that it's impossible for giraffes to fly. And if you once provided with that information, you still say, I don't care what you say, giraffes still can fly. You are a person that I would never conversate with again. But if you can admit I'm not right all the time. There have been things you've shown me, and I'm like, okay, I had a misunderstanding about that, and vice versa.
Right.
There's a certain decorum with adult conversation, and you have to have a certain maturity to be able to speak to somebody with a different view and understand that the brotherhood or the sisterhood is more important and is greater as a result of bouncing ideas off of each other. And it also improves your vocabulary, your dialect, your use of rhetoric and all that other stuff is beneficial. The other thing is, I usually always think I'm right. And quite often I am. And there used to be a commercial where this dummy was in a car and he was driving and they crashed the dummy. Boom. And at the end of the commercial, they say, you too can learn a lot from a dummy. And that's my mentality.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, brother, for all that good information, man. And like I said, hey, let's get together. Let's do this more often. And let's stay in contact. And thank you once again. And thank you for listening to another episode of my Curious Mind podcast. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And your homework for this week, please share with someone else and get them to like and subscribe. Until next time, peace out. Thank you again, good brother.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Uhuru.